Welcome to our webinar. The goal of this webinar is not only to see how many M's I can alliterate with in the webinar itself, but is really just to kind of help provide sort of a framework for markets to develop a work plan that's measurable and time constrained, so that the manager, him or herself, will know what they should be doing and when, and the board knows what the manager should be doing and when, and it's all agreed upon and understood. I've run into a lot of situations where markets are just sort of, nobody has any time and they're just trying to get it done. They're just trying to kind of hang on till the season is over. And it's somewhat of a lost opportunity. It's also really hard when a market manager, I see Suzanne's on the line, when a market manager leaves halfway through the season. So, it's helpful to it would be helpful for markets to know where a new person can step in. So without further ado, so we're gonna go through this with the perspective of goal setting, and discuss how we can make these goals a useful and measurable task for managers. And then we're gonna discuss how you can take those goals, put them into a time frame and a timeline that would become sort of a unifying document for everyone to kind of take a look at and make sure that we're all on the same page and doing what we need to get done. So the first thing you need to do for this market manager position is to identify what the standing every week responsibilities are going to be. Some of these will be stuff that's already there, and you can kind of go through a list of responsibilities fairly easily. If this is a brand new position, you can use the rest of this SMART goal setting process that we're going to discuss to kind of develop the standing responsibilities as well. So, but it's helpful to know what is absolutely immovable and must be a part of it, and get an idea of what kind of time commitment that is per week for a manager, or even on a quarterly basis, because it's not going to be the same for August as it is in March. So a couple places you can go for that, of course, are the job description itself, board observations, any sort of input that the board might have. And I'm going to use board as sort of the blanket term for the leadership group. I know that not everybody has a board. The existing manager might have some thoughts about the standing responsibilities, what's too much, it's sort of outside of their scope of skills, or too time consuming, or hasn't shown the sort of the impact that, despite a real good effort, hasn't shown the impact that they've been hoping they would. And then you also have myself and Margie and Martin and the entire CFA team to bounce ideas off of, and we welcome those at any time. We'd love to have them. And then there's also, you get customer feedback over the course of a year. That's always useful. So the next thing you want to do is sort of identify the goals for the position. And I wrote this slide with the idea of use of a market starting from scratch. But I threw in the existing job description in case this is for markets that have existing positions as well. You can find those goals in a lot of different places. And I just kind of wanted to provide a couple of ideas. If your market has a business plan, that would be a great place to start. And if your market does not have a business plan, I see Katie Bowman is also watching. She is with us. She is part of the team at KCARD, and they are more than willing to help with business planning services free of charge for farmers markets. At least I believe it's free of charge. I'm 95% sure. So, okay. So the idea here is that you're making a list of things you would really like to see to become the responsibility of your manager. The idea of this manager is, the way we see it at the Farmers Market Support Program, is to take a load off of the growers and the vendors so that they can focus on their booth and improving their own businesses, rather than focusing than working on their business as well as the business of the market, which can be really time consuming. And we want to, our long-term goal is to provide assistance to make that happen for all the markets in the state. So you have a list of things of targeted goals that you want for the market manager, and existing lists and existing duties for this market manager. And I would make a prioritized list. I would keep it reasonably short, because you don't want these things can add up quickly, and sometimes doing it well takes a lot longer than doing it, halfway. So I would keep it to about 10 items or less, and keeping it realistic is really important. The thing that I see a lot, especially with the Farmers Market Support Program applications, we had a number of opportunities for markets to ask, to sort of tell us what their challenges were and what their goals were for the year, and how we can help them through technical assistance or double dollars. And some of the things that we got were really broad statements. And they're not false, but they're just very broad, and they're hard to suss out how we can help from that. So the example I have here is grow the market. What does that mean? Grow the vendor list, grow the variety, grow the crowd counts. It probably means all of those things, but each one of those things takes a different set of actions and goals to make a reality. So the idea is that you're kind of honing in on specific items. And then, ultimately, if your manager is already employed, then you would want to filter that list through their skill set, their stated skill set, their comfort level with what you've made there, and their own capacity as far as, a lot of these managers are part-time positions. So, they may have, 3 kids in school, a part-time job, and so, day hours to get some of this stuff could be challenging. But so that ideally you are taking that list beforehand, taking a look at what the manager can do or will not do, and then adjusting that list to make sure that it reflects something that's reasonable and realistic for the manager, him or herself. So from there, you want to kind of develop take these goals and make them SMART goals. And SMART goals stands for specific, measurable, agreed upon, realistic, and time bound. And we'll go through what that means here in a second. It's really more like SMRTA. Ideally, you want to do the agreed upon part at the end, but it's just so convenient to have it right there in the middle to make the word look good. So, you can say SMRTA if you want. So a specific goal is well defined and clear to anyone who has basic knowledge of the market. And that's important. It's really important that these goals be specific enough. One of the things that we're working on now with our MOUs for the market manager program itself is taking some of the fields that markets for applications, and taking what they said and developing them into SMART goals to some degree. they're not necessarily, they're time bound as far as the year goes, but they're more specific ways that we know we can help than help grow the market, as an example. Ideally, it's a specific goal that you have, so it's one thing that you're trying to make happen, and it's a measurable goal. So you want to make sure that by measuring it, by making sure that it's measurable, you know that you can achieve it, but like that goal is something that you can declare as achieved or unachieved by the time that the time frame is complete. And it helps you kind of know how close you are to your goal as well, if it's quantifiable. And those are really helpful things. They need to be, so this is the last, this should be at the end. Ideally, everybody's agreeing on these goals at the end, and this will kind of happen after the work plan is complete. Well, it can happen a number of places over the course of this process, but it should be agreed upon probably when the goals are written, and then again when the work plan is complete. Now the biggest challenge is determining what is realistic. This is the thing that I always have a hard time with, is knowing when a goal can be too time consuming to be realistic within the time frame that you have to use. And in this case, we'll say by the end of the year, by the end of the season. Some of the goals can be really hard to get done in a year, but a piece of the goal can be done in a year, or 3 months, or a month, or a week. So the idea is that you are taking a look at it and making sure that it really is realistic to get done quickly. And if it can be sliced into smaller pieces with smaller time frames, that is a great plan. So ultimately, the long-term goal of what we do is to make sure that the market manager is an essential position. We see it as the key to making a market stable and viable marketplace for new growers, existing growers, and ultimately we'd like to see a stronger local food economy in all counties in the state. And we see the market manager as one of the biggest pieces of that. But that creates challenges because there are definitely a lot of people in your markets, and you're probably all thinking of one right now who doesn't have who doesn't feel the same way as we do about the value of the market manager. So this is where we're hoping that this work plan can prove useful. Lastly, the time-specific piece of this is really important. So it's the idea that you are growing. So keeping that grow the market goal as an example. We want to grow the crowd count for the first quarter by 10%. That's more along the lines of what we're looking at here. But we would like to have goals so that we know that it should be done by this point. That doesn't mean that it's a failure if it doesn't happen by that time, but you have set you've set yourself in the manager. You've given that manager some deadlines, which is really helpful to get things done. I know it helps me out a lot, because the biggest challenge is for me is when I give myself too much time to get something done. I usually take all of that time to not do it, and then I have a lot less time at the end to get all of it done. And it's it is procrastination. I can't deny that. So now that you have your SMART goals and you've kind of developed a you've developed a clear sort of time specific goal, you can apply that to a calendar. So you're going to have specific stuff like kids' days, every first day of the month from April through September. So you want to take that and apply it to the calendar and work backwards on that calendar towards what needs to happen for the specific elements of that goal to be completed. I think monthly, and the spreadsheet that I've attached does everything by month within a quarter, and I think it's pretty useful. It looks a lot, Margie will recognize it because it looks a lot like our work plan for our grant reporting. And that's what the template is here. I took out the outcomes section because that's kind of the language that we use for the grant itself, but you'll see, we'll go through that in a minute. So the idea behind this, now that you have these goals laid out on a calendar, including the important dates, like the things that absolutely have to be done on a certain day or by a certain day, like our reporting for the double dollars and the interim reports. Those are all laid out on this this work plan, and you have them set up so that they make sense. They make a clear sort of order of business for the week, for the month, and they are reasonable. They're reasonable expectations for the amount of time that you've allotted for your position. So, if you know that ideally a market manager isn't spending 100% of their time at market without any sort of paperwork time, follow-up time before or after the market. And this would help you, setting things up like this will help you see where the gaps are, opportunities are for, you know, pushing the market past where it has been and making things more useful, or making sure that things that have been falling through the cracks over the last few years won't this year. And by using this template, you also have a sort of a document that unifies everybody's eyes where they're looking for information to reference. And by doing that, everybody knows what everybody knows what the position should be doing and when, and should be able to even recognize if it's not happening, how they can help. That's the goal, is kind of making a clear document that will help the team become a real team of making this market succeed. So I wanted to kind of go over a couple of the farmers market support program applications of some of the broader concepts that were put in our applications for things that markets would like to see happen. And they are valid goals, but they need more. In order for them to actually be successful goals, they need to be a lot more clear and measurable and time bound. So I wanted to go through and talk. So these are some of ours, and I wanted to go through how I would do this for those three. So increase social media presence. I thought, okay, well, how about 3 Facebook posts per week? You know, one during the market, one before the market, one after the market. Maybe the manager is showing, you know, the cool stuff that he or she got that day or went home with that day for that post day, or thanking the vendors and customers for coming, or setting up the promotions for next week. Like we have a specific band coming next week, please come out. We had a really great time on Saturday. And then the next Saturday, we're going to have this awesome bluegrass band or what have you. So, so this is the specific piece is the 3 Facebook posts per week. That's the specific goal. It's measured by the posts themselves. So you can see that if there were only 2 posts per week, then it's measurable and it's easy to see that there is a shortcoming there, and we can kind of explore why there was only 2. That doesn't mean that it's a failure. It just means that we know that that wasn't the goal, and the goal has changed, or the result is different from the goal. So we can kind of explore where the disconnect is there. It is a reasonable thing to do. 3 Facebook posts per week isn't super hard. I'm not good at it, but I could do it if I needed to. And if it was expected of me, I would definitely do it. So, and it doesn't take a lot of time, especially if you're in the frame of mind of looking for interesting things going on and setting aside an hour or 2 a week to just meet, even if you're just looking for news items to share and plug it with the Facebook group, with your market as something that this is an interesting thing that impacts our market or could impact our market in the future. I set up a Google News search for the keyword farmers market. So I see farmers market news from all over the country. A lot of the time it's not super useful for us because it's about, this market in Arizona is closing up for the winter. But every now and again, there's something that's really blanket and useful, sort of blanketed for the whole country or Kentucky specific. And it's a good way to kind of see what other people are up to around the country as well. So I think it is reasonable and easy to do. It doesn't take too much time, and you can schedule the posts. So if you need to do it all on one day, you can schedule the posts. For Wednesday, you can make all 3 posts for the Saturday, sort of during the market, after the market, and before the market. You can schedule it to all happen on the same day, or schedule it on the same day to happen over the course of the next 3-4 days. And we have time bound, so we have sort of a clear sort of goals for when they will get done. And this can happen. The one thing actually noticing that I omitted to this is, would we want to make those 3 Facebook posts per week once the season is started, every day from April or every week from April to October, or May to October, or however early your market starts. That would be the other piece you want to add on to here. So with implementing Kentucky Double Dollars, we're going to do a SMART goal for this too. So the specifics of implementing Double Dollars are distribution, redemption, reporting, and I'm using enforcing, but just sort of making sure that the Double Dollars is all getting used correctly and everybody's informed correctly. The vendors, the customers, and your good friends with Farmers Market Support Program and Community Farm Alliance. So those are the specifics of it. And you can measure, there's already measurable stuff that you already have at your disposal through the FM Tracks software that we have, that we're asking markets to use. So you can see how much has gone out, how much has been redeemed. You can see the sales and impact for the market. And you can see, you can also, one of the things we're asking people to do is track individual Snap customers, excuse me, I've got a dry throat, through the their first and last initial and the last 4 digits of their EBT card. So it's random enough that nobody will ever know who that person is, but it helps you know who's coming back and using their SNAP card. And that's part of one of our grant requirements with our federal funders. So that's where you can get your measurables for this goal. It's reasonable to think that it takes about an hour before market to get things sorted out, 2 hours during and follow up. 2 hours post market to make sure that everything is tied up with a neat and tidy bow, and maybe an hour over the course of the market. That one is where it will vary depending on how busy your market is and how busy your market is with Kentucky Double Dollars customers. But all in all, it's about, let's say, 4 to 6 hours a week, depending on who you're asking, depending on the market. But that's a reasonable expectation, I think. So that ultimately your market will have to decide what's reasonable for that time frame. And the time frame that we've also included for the time-bound portion of the SMART goal is to make sure that it's done every week, or at a minimum every month, because we have our own standard reporting that we have to do in order to get checks. It gets complicated, but in order to get the reimbursement checks to market at a certain day on a certain disbursement period, we need to have everything in-house by the 5th. So that is my example of a SMART goal for Double Dollars. Now, the last one, the create and execute a marketing plan, is actually 2 goals. The creation of the marketing plan itself should happen in the next few months. I would start looking at it now or in March. And ideally, you may already have standing activities that count as marketing that you're going to have for this year, and those activities count as part of this marketing plan, so you're already halfway there. And then execution happens during the market season, so that would be press releases and promotions on Facebook, which is also something that you can include in another goal on the Facebook goal. But it's clear that these are 2 different goals. So creating it and executing it are different things. So I split it into 2 different pieces for the creation, and I'm only going to do the creation of the marketing plan. The execution is something that we are probably going to talk about in other webinars as well. So keep an eye out for that. But I threw out a marketing plan with, maybe we'll just do a marketing plan that's 4 events over the course of the year. So we'll say Mother's Day, 4th of July, the National Farmers Market Week, and maybe a back to school or end of season bash. So we've declared that is our marketing plan, are these 4 events for the year. And that's your specifics. And the goal with this is to turn that into how are you going to take those events and break out those events into specific goals to get done and spell those out in a work plan. So you're going to do, let's say we'll do 1 month. Well, 1 month prior, starting 1 month prior to the event, we're going to plug the event itself through a local paper press release, Facebook boosted posts, and maybe press releases to the local radio station. And you can do that weekly for, you never know when a slow day slow news day is going to give you extra exposure. So it doesn't hurt to just resend press releases to local papers and radio stations. So with the marketing plan itself, I'm sorry, so these goals are measurable because you can measure it by the crowd count. If you're going to do some kind of code word on the promotional materials, you can kind of track how many people give you the code word, although that is easily sort of hacked just from word of mouth. You know, if anyone has any creative ideas for tracking through that kind of language, I'd love to hear it. I've seen it work, but it feels like people just kind of say, hey, if you say Facebook to, you know, if you say to your friend, hey, say Facebook to the manager, they'll give you something. It kind of loses the impact. It's hard to actually see how impactful your promotions were. But one of the most valuable things I've ever seen is just sort of when people come to the info booth and you don't recognize them, you know, is this your first time here? How'd you hear about us? Are you here today because of the event? That kind of questioning can be really helpful. You do need to kind of find a way to track it. So I would keep something on your clipboard that kind of something that you can kind of check on. You can also throw out a hashtag for the event and plug that through signage at the info booth and see what kind of hashtags are popping up. You can search it by that specific hashtag to see if there's any traction there. And then there's also vendor sales. Those are harder to get, of course, but they are something that is really useful if we can get vendors to share with us if their day was better by comparison to last week or last year or this time of year. It's helpful to kind of know what is helping. So we have, for the promotions itself, we can measure things by the Facebook impressions on the posts themselves. So if you've posted anything on Facebook, you'll see that on the lower right or left hand corner of the post itself, the number of impressions you've made. Those of course go up if you pay for a boost, but the boosts themselves are, you know, $5. So if you have that in your marketing budget, you know, it's not too painful. But that is a way to kind of measure the impact of the effort. You always have crowd counts again, and of course this informal survey is helpful. So the idea behind making this goal reasonable is like really kind of digging down into how many events this season is actually doable. They can take a lot of time. If you're good at event planning, you can do a bunch quickly. But if your manager is kind of new to the idea, you know, limiting it to a couple times a year might be more reasonable and a better way to set the goal. You know, beginners are slower at trying to do something like event planning than people who've been doing it their entire lives. You know, and the other way that you kind of measure if it's going to be a reasonable activity is how many details are required for this event. So, for example, let's say the 4th of July promotion. If we're going to have a 4th of July event that day, you know, the event itself could have balloons or sort of some kind of like eating contest, whatever is sort of in season. If you have watermelons at that time, that could be something you can do, and have like a watermelon eating contest, or watermelon pit spitting or something, seed spitting, But each of those things takes details, and it takes time out of the day, and it takes promotion, and it takes sort of planning for the operations of the little piece as well. So like, or you can get like a petting zoo to come out or something. That's easy if you can just have the petting zoo come out and do it themselves. But if there's other stuff that requires attention of the manager, you have to kind of figure out how to make this goal reasonable. With the promotions themselves, and this is the execution of the marketing plan, you can make it reasonable by incorporating it into existing sort of patterns that you've already had for promotion. So in this case, probably Facebook, regular posts on Facebook to kind of plug it would make a big difference. If you are already doing press releases for other stuff, you can throw it in there for events. So you can do a press release for multiple events if you want it. There's some challenge with doing too much, but reminding people, staying relevant with the people who have access to lots of eyes is really important. And the other thing that you really want to make sure you do with these promotions is allow for mistakes to happen, and people who are learning how to do this to learn how to do this, so that they're not stuck trying to do something that they just can't get done in a certain amount of time. These are time relevant because you have specific days and there's time assigned. So you have, let's say, so you have the second Sunday of the month for Mother's Day, or is it the third Sunday? Boy, I should remember that by now. But these are time bound because you know exactly what time of the day, when these events are happening. And so you can work towards them and see them on the calendar, work backwards from there to know that you have X amount to get done by this day. And you can make the promotions time bound for making these you're doing sort of promotions on a weekly basis, 1 month prior to the event day. So ideally, you're plugging it once a week, every week, leading up. So we have this thing happening on National Farmers Market Week. We have poster coloring. We have a poster competition for the market. You come create a poster, submit by this day. You have the whole month to do it, or 2 weeks, or 3 weeks, or 1 week. And that is how you kind of make the promotion itself time bound. So you have these goals, and we kind of went over some examples of how to make them useful. And I created a document that I'll show you right now, but you would list out the expectations for the position by time frame. So expectations for it would almost be useful to do it daily or weekly. So like, these things happen on this day, and especially for market day operations, what's getting done. But for this case, we're going to talk about the spreadsheet that we've attached here. So you'll see, let me just get to it real quick. So you'll see that I have the goals listed here on the left-hand side. Okay, sorry, I'm just checking to make sure. All right, we have the goals listed here on the left-hand side. These are your SMART goals, and then we have them broken down. You can break them down from there into pieces within within these months. So you have activities within the goals. So I'm still learning how to use all these tools at our disposal here. So we have, here's April, which would be useful. So you lay out your goals here, you break them down into pieces if you need to, and these would be where the SMART goals could go. Specifics here, and then how you're gonna make them happen here within the sub-activities. And then you kind of have results based on how things went in notes. And that is a really easy way to kind of make this document digestible. So we have them by quarter. And you can toggle through these tabs here and make your plan for the year. And it's easy for that to become your reference document. Everybody can take a look at that to make sure that the market itself is running on time and on schedule. So then that document itself can then become that you can an organized manager can then take that and turn it into a weekly plan. So okay, so these are our goals for this month or this quarter. What do I have to get done on the first week of this month? And that's a really useful document as well. That would be a different document from this one, but one I would recommend. So once everything's put into that document, it becomes a calendar for everybody to check on progress, and it becomes a place where managers can find opportunity to go above and beyond if they're motivated to do so. So I would leave gaps. You know, I would leave some cushion time when you're laying this out to make sure that there's some, you know, sort of that 80-20 rule of 80% clearly defined things that need to get done, and then 20% of their time is committed to, you know, something that gets them excited about this work, because some pretty cool stuff can come out of that. So this document then becomes the place where everybody goes to see, and the manager, him or herself, is putting in the results over the course of the month and the week, so that they are providing proof of their value, and it becomes an evaluation document at the end of the season for the manager to not only prove value to the supervisors or supervisor, but it also is a document that can be shared with sort of the skeptical vendors in your market to show what kind of work was done and how it was impactful. And you know, there's no harm, depending on how difficult your skeptical vendors are, it can also show them, you know, how this position is something that's not only valuable, but is also getting better with time. So it also becomes a document that you can share with funders. And it also, if it's used correctly and frequently, is useful for trying to remember important details, lessons, contact information for that jump house guy you used back in July. Let's give them a call. So this can become a useful document for 2019 as well, of what worked, what didn't work, what can be improved upon. But it lays things out in a useful way. Some things that I think are really important to make sure that you keep in mind as you're doing this is really commit to the reasonable piece of these goals. You know, I've met a lot of managers that are stretched really, really, really thin. They are the doers, right? They are the people who can do a gazillion things and do it well, but it also there's a certain point where the burnout rate with those folks can become pretty significant, and you don't want to lose those doers. You want to make sure that they're happy and content, and also know what is expected of them. So then those people are usually also the folks that go above and beyond. So keeping it reasonable and agreed upon are really important. And because the nature of the position is that we get a lot of younger applicants. There are a lot of people who are learning how to write a press release for the first time, or doing things without the confidence that they're going to get it right. So there's time that comes with that. So really make sure that the goals reflect the skill set of your manager. This is a really useful thing to do, and planning it now prevents you from having to do the just hold on till the end of the year stuff that happens. And it might still happen, but it's easy to see what can be done if a manager leaves mid-season, which is a useful thing to have, and it will be a useful thing to look at in the future as well. So even with all of that, if you have even even if it's a partial work plan, it's still way more useful than nothing. And a full work plan, of course, is way more useful than a partial work plan. So, do what you can and when you can do it. And it can be a lovely, awesome, harmonious, butt-kicking time for the market. So I thought I'd just challenge you, those of you who are on, to consider trying to make a work plan. You can use the document that we created. If you looked at that document and thought that's not useful at all, feel free to create one. It's not too hard. But I just thought I'd toss out a challenge. Nobody is absolutely required to do this. I want to make that clear. But if you would like a deadline to try to make this happen, I thought I'd throw out March 21st. And you can toss stuff my way. I would love to help. If you are trying to figure out how to make a goal into a SMART goal, I enjoy doing that. So reach out to me, and I'll see if I can kind of tease out how we can make it specific and measurable and reasonable and time bound. And then you can agree to it to make it the SMART. So that's my offer to you guys as a challenge. And I thought I would toss it out to questions. I hope this has been useful. If you guys have any questions, feel free to toss them in the questions box or raise your hand, and we can go from there. I have to see a couple of questions. Well, no questions. So I guess, folks, if that is all you got, if there aren't any questions coming in, oh, Margie or Molly would like to see the last. Is this the one you'd like to see, Molly? Molly asked to see the last slide again, so I believe this is it.
And James, isn't there a copy of the PowerPoint, the entire PowerPoint in one of the handouts?
Yeah, the entire PowerPoint is available for download from this control panel. If you take a look on the right-hand side, you'll see a handouts box. If you click that triangle, you should be able to download the work plan example and the PowerPoint presentation itself.
And James, I also that you're recording this, just another reminder that you're recording this, and so this entire webinar will be available.
Yeah, so we are recording this. It will be downloaded. Once we're done here, I will be converting it for the next 20-30 minutes, and then I will have it up and available as a YouTube link probably around tomorrow, and I'll share that with everyone in the follow-up email. And we'll be posting it on our Facebook group as well. So if any of you guys are interested, take a look on Facebook and find our Kentucky Market Managers or Market Leaders group. We do a lot of stuff there that we'll give you heads up about next webinars and news that's going on and other stuff that's going on in the world, the farmers market world. Okay, well, we've been on for about an hour, so I'm gonna take off unless there's anything else. Looks like we're good. All right, everyone, thanks so much for attending. I hope this was useful. Please let us know if there's anything that you'd like us to do for this presentation in the future with the exit poll as you leave. Have a great day, and we will be in touch again shortly with the next webinar. So until then, have a good day. Bye-bye.